the late 18th century and mid 19th century, England, the popular radical press included elements of citizen media through its activist stances and uses of the audience reporters. Similarly, in the US around 1740s existed as citizens distributed political pamphlets in the cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. This practice was magnified by Thomas Paine's publication of Common Sense in 1776 with approximately 1,50,000 copies distributed. This practice in the West demonstrated that citizens would produce news and become a part of news production. In the 1920s, free radio station or pirate radio involved unauthorized community activities and politics and cultural dissidents who broadcasted offshore in parts of continental Europe or the United Kingdom. The global media has been assisted through citizen journalism for long. Whether there is a war, natural calamity, or a political turmoil, citizen journalists are armed to cover such stories. The attack on the World Trade Center on 11 September 2001 was a prominent milestone in the history of citizen journalism. It came to prominence in the aftermath of 9/11 as eyewitnesses' accounts and survival stories with photos and other media started appearing on the internet. Later, some of the best citizen journalism following the invasion of the Iraq in 2003 came from the blog of Salam Pax, a 29-year-old architect living in the suburb of the Baghdad who documented events before and after the invasion. Similarly, citizen journalists covered Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and London bombings too. There are some of the first pictures of the attack came from the citizen journalist. One of the most recent examples of citizen journalism is the reportage of the Syrian crisis by the citizen journalism. In Syria, a civil war broke in 2011 and there are huge casualties on both sides. And in this, the foreign journalists' lives are at stake because there is no such sanction is given for coverage of news in Syria. Citizen journalism in Syria comes in picture when the mainstream journalism failed to report. In the case of Syria, the impediments to the mainstream media is many ways. Firstly, the Syrian government has repeatedly banned international reporters, which made coverage of the country exceptionally dangerous for the foreign journalists, who often had to enter the country illegally if they wanted to report from there. Syria is one of the worst countries for safety of journalists globally. The government at the same time was peddling propaganda through domestic media. Journalism faced a challenge in Syria as the journalists need to show actual footage of the crisis than a superficial representation. Therefore, the reportage of the Syrian civil war was only possible through citizen journalism. Citizen journalists in Syria mostly used short video clips. These unstructured video often shot in unstructured way in local languages to find their way to social media like YouTube and to the international media outlets. Though citizen journalism hasn't lowered the casualty or ended the war, but it helps create a sensory and emotional entrance into the news for audience of the media who have come to expect more intense connections than news outlets traditionally have provided. It allows audience to gain a deeper and more empathetic perspective on the Syrian violence. So the collaboration with the CNN and New York Times, the citizen journalists are building solidarity globally. The immersive experience has gained audience from all across the world who are campaigning for an end to the violence. Citizen journalism has also been involved in several other political uprisings globally. Apart from the Arab Spring, citizen journalism was determinantal in the incident or event Occupy Wall Street. In 2011, in New York, Wall Street, the citizen journalism started during the Occupy Wall Street when the press was denied access by the police to report on the thousands of protesters. As a result, many journalists, including Tim Pool, used their smartphone to stream the event unfolding on social media with millions watching the videos in real time. Citizen journalism has been a global phenomenon alternative to the mainstream media. Now let us focus on the history of journalism by the citizens in India. In India, citizen journalism has a long history. It started with people contributing reportages to newspapers, then shifting to television, and finally resting on the digital media. Citizen journalism has gained recognition in the past few decades. In contrast to the traditional print technologies, digital tools and the Web 2.0 platforms made the production and dissemination of the news content faster and easier, as observed by the Paul. In India, citizen journalism was first introduced in television by the CNN IBN, where the content sent by citizen journalists was aired by the channel. It had a separate program, Citizen Journalist Show, dedicated to the citizen journalism, where the advertisements of the program went like, you see it, you report it. It had different categories like CJ photos, CJ videos, mobile CJ photos, and mobile CJ videos. The agenda of the news discussed during the citizen journalism shows vary from the politics, irregularities, bribery, etc. It was a big moment for citizen journalists because the program was featured on the content entirely produced by citizen journalists. The publicity, the nature of reporting, and the issues concerning it gave a limelight to citizen journalism. Similarly, New Delhi Television or NDTV also air citizen journalism programs where citizen journalists share their videos, text messages, reports which led to speedy delivery of justice and unsolved cases getting solved. Similarly, the international television news channel BBC hosts Your Story. The Times of India has a citizen reporter app, portal that gathers citizen journalism related stories. People can use the app to voice their opinions and reportage in the form of text, photographs, audio and video formats related to issues that concern the society. Times of India provide opportunities to citizen journalists who are non-professional and playing an active role in the process of reporting news and dissemination of information. It is seen that the reportage is mainly related to local issues, municipal corporations, local governments and etc. In the newspaper, citizen journalism is restrained to local issues of urgent concern like bad roads, potholes, lack of civic amenities or government failures in tendering its risk. With the coming of internet, there has been a change in the trend within the journalism. Before, when there was no internet, journalism was an expensive media restricted to the television or newspaper. But with the advent of the internet and wide use, social media has shifted journalism to digital space significantly. Journalism has not only become a cheaper venture, but there are also parallel spaces like citizen journalism which are becoming significant source of information. Now let's talk about the digitization. The digitization of the media and the internet revolutionized the journalism. It was during 2005 that some of the prominent citizen journalism began on the internet. Like Rediff.com came in 2005, taking citizen journalism to a wider audience. And Mary News, and this is one of the websites, came in 2006. It was followed by nynews.com, many others like Youth Ki Awaaz, Video Volunteers, Khabar Lahariya, and Charkha Development Network, which are one of the significant examples to mention. Youth Ki Awaaz launched in 2008 and has become one of the biggest web portals in the country. The web portal gives space to the citizen journalism and apart from guest contributions. The portal has created impact through their stories and has given space to thousands of stories from citizen journalists and contributors. Khabar Lahariya has given exposure to unseen places and unknown voices. And if you see Khabar Lahariya's stories, the newspaper features the rural reporting and reports from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh through women cooperatives. The newspaper, having a circulation of 1,20,000 counters, which illiteracy and also mobilizes ordinary women as journalists and does rural reporting. Khabar Lahariya is a major example of how ordinary women could be mobilized as citizen journalists and make impactful stories. Let's look at the other case study, the successful story of CG Netswara. CG Netswara is a mobile-based citizen journalism that is being successfully run in the remote areas of Chhattisgarh, a resource-rich state inhabited by India's culturally distinct and socio-culturally and economically marginalized indigenous communities known as Adivasis. In pursuit of accountability in India, the area has witnessed conflict between Maoist insurgents and the security forces due to the availability of resources, poverty, and other political issues. Their revenue model in the area is driven mainly through advertisements and not by reporting actual stories. Therefore, the local journalists have formed a nexus with the local government officials, business people, and politicians. In order to challenge the narrative that was going round in the mainstream media, CG Netswara became a platform to voice stories from Chhattisgarh besides violence. Apart from developmental or government issues, human rights violations and farmers' issues were exchanged. The local community in the area could not access the news as the newspapers and other media were mostly in English. Also, the literacy in the area did not allow any other forms of media to flourish. CG Netswara was not only published in the local language but also it was made in such a simplistic way that it could be accessed by everyone. In February 2010, the forum received a fellowship through which it develops a mechanism where ordinary users make a phone call and the message is recorded. Then the message is moderated by the professional journalists and then published to a portal. It is then accessed through a web portal or a mobile phone. CG Netswara on an average receives 240 calls a day and publishes on an average of 3 news posts per day. It has grown into a serious fact checking and news websites. And the portal was focused on mostly localized issues and eyewitness events. The other incidents which came to prominence due to citizen journalism was Delhi gang rape, where a 23-year-old woman was raped and murdered on a moving bus. The rape led to a huge protest and mass uproar against the increasing crime against women. According to the NCRB data, 572 cases of rape was reported in the capital and the number rose to 996 in 2016. The movement against the crime against women started gaining momentum. All credit to citizen journalists. The incident led citizen journalists who started reporting from the ground on the developments and posting on the social media. The mainstream added a section in their news bulletin and programs as citizen news and views, and comments on Twitter, YouTube videos, and others. The Delhi gang rape demonstrated how citizen journalism has really come to the fore. Change.org, an online platform, Stop Rape Now, was initiated by former journalist Namit Bhandare, seeking the intervention of President Pranab Mukherjee and Chief Justice of India in this case. Now let's look at the importance of citizen journalism. The importance of citizen journalism could be understood by revisiting the characteristics of it. The word citizen in the citizen journalism itself explains the notion behind it. Citizen journalism is a platform where the voice of the audience reaches to the audience in the society when the mainstream media and other agents of the government fail to deliver their duties. Citizen journalism highlights the shortcomings in the system. It has resulted in the proletarianism of the news. News, which was a commodity only in the hands of few journalists, became a shared commodity. It is breaking the line between professional and citizens.